and because you have to be in people's faces every day. I know, I get, like, you were talking about influencers who are giving out advice, right?
Yeah.
They're like 25-year-olds who are like telling 60-year-olds how to save for retirement.
Yeah.
But because you have to post every day, you have to just, then you're like milking the bottom of the barrel, right? Which doesn't even have any nipples. You're just like, okay, fuck it. What can I pull out of this, this empty sack of mine that, and so you end up becoming more and more a sort of, what is the word? A sort of parody of yourself
Yeah.
by the end of your career. And that, you're right, that is not very authentic.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I hope you're well on this day, whenever you're listening and wherever you're listening. And of course, if you are listening um, to this in India, we are in the week before the Festival of Lights, Festival of Noise in some ways. I think as I'm getting older, I'm getting more sensitive, and I've been sensitive to sound, not sensitive in other aspects of my life. But yes, we're in for a lot of noise, unfortunately, in the rest of the world. There is real bombs, there are real deaths, there are real um, people suffering for the mistakes of a few, for the ego of a few. So my heart goes out to them, the families and the children, and it's terribly sad. And I don't know what we can get out of looking at a festival like this, because it's the festival of good over evil. And I think this is something which is so fascinating, right? When you forget about the idea or about the thing that you can learn from a festival or a ritual, um, and you take just the act of it. Like I was talking to a friend about this. This friend keeps reappearing in different episodes. He's a real person, right? He's multiple people. She's multiple people, but they have uh, condensed themselves into this one person I keep meeting and having these thoughts and discussions with. Anyway, we were talking about this idea of people doing shitty things, right? And I think by shitty, I'm not judging them, because I think greed is a part of society. I mean, how much ever you want to be better than someone, or you want to be a better version of yourself, you're still sucked into it, because let's just accept it. That's the nature of the beast. That's where we live, unless, of course, you're isolated in your farm and you're a survivalist who's got everything taken care of, and you just want to be one with yourself and the universe and nature. But let's be real, many of us don't have the luxury of that. Many of us don't have the survival skills for that. Many of us don't have the ability to escape society. It's a trap. It's a social trap that we are bought into, we're sold into, and it's a story that we are living. But we can still do something for ourselves within that construct. Now, there are these people, including myself, who do shitty things. Now, the shitty things can go from killing someone for property to doing something silly like lying to your partner, right? Now, the range is vast. The extremes are crazy. Now, of course, we have wars going on right now in Palestine and the Gaza Strip. We have wars going on in Ukraine. That's another extreme of humanity. We have people harming animals. That's another extreme of humanity, which I've spoken about in other episodes. And then, of course, you have the things which you just do to get by, to survive, right? The simple things, maybe to protect your family, to do things to get up ahead in work. I mean, we all got to survive, right? At the end of the day. But what I'm trying to suggest is this idea of people making these ritualistic offerings religiously, having these pujas, or because they've done something wrong or they want something good to happen to them, or going to the temple because they feel that by doing so they can atone for their sins, or in certain religions, confessing. Now, nothing wrong with it, to each his own. But if you look beyond it, like if you look at texts, or you look at religious texts, or you look at scripture, or you look at things that we can take from the past and learn, and actually knowledge converting to wisdom, you when you look at a festival of good over evil, and not just look at the fireworks and cards and the social aspect of community or celebration, but if you actually look at it for a deeper understanding of humanity, and not just look at Rama going to Lanka and rescuing Sita from Ravana, but if you look at the themes that are deeper of what led society to go down that path to create a king like Ravana, who was fighting back a certain a system, or fighting for a certain principle or ideology or a way of life, and then you look at what the person and also the story of someone like Sita represents in her time, or if you look at Rama and what that story represents of power and duty, and not just these superficial ideas of good and evil and light and dark. I think that's somewhere we can really learn from, as not just Indians but as people, because every book Some are more literal, some are more closely interpreted, some don't allow much for interpretation. And something like when I spoke to Anand Neelakantan, he told you about the, the the wisdom of these books and how it's open to multiple thousands of interpretations of that day. I think that's fascinating, right? And this is something I've been thinking about, like language as well, is is so closely monitored, and it's at the same time one of the most amazing tools that human beings have developed over thousands of years. Yet we use that in a negative way. Either it's the cancellation of speech or freedom of speech or restriction of freedom of speech, but even the more finer points of language. When someone hears someone speak in Hindi, they get upset. They're going, "We don't. It's not our language." Or someone in Hindi listen to someone in Kannada speaking, or someone speaking in English. I think we are becoming more petty and becoming more narrow minded to what we identify as ours, right? Like my culture, my language, my food, my friend. And that's only going to stifle growth. That's only going to stifle the way we go forward. And as a species, we are limiting ourselves because we're taking more stricter, more narrow minded interpretations of books, which are supposed to be timeless, of texts that are supposed to be vastly more, infinitely more wise than what we are, and infinitely offering so much more to our interpretation for a better way of life. Instead of that, we're restricting it to, oh, this is what my past did for me, and this is what my past taught me. I'm going to be proud of it, and I'm going to take that interpretation and I'm going to gloat over someone who doesn't have it, or I'm going to use it to suppress someone else because I think my way of life, my way of living, my ideology, my principles are better and they're more right than someone else's. And I think that is so shitty. And that's led to these kind of people who are leading countries like this into horrible suffering because they have certain principles that they think should be enforced and should be used to control a group of other people. And this could be any war conflict that you're seeing has happened, is happening, and will happen. And I'm not here to change the world, and I can't, and I don't know if you can change the world. And many of us, because of information and access to it, we are just using it to talk about it, and we're kind of just getting into arguments and debates and getting into like the horrible thing that the cycle repeats itself into. And yet, um, what can we do with the tools that we have of mass communication and instantly spread information? Yet, if we can take a combination of the wisdom, the openness of interpretation of many of these old ancient texts, along with this form of dissemination of information, can we create and unlimited language, unlimited speech, unrestricted speech? Can we create a better model of life for the next generation, which isn't egocentric, which isn't inhibiting, and which isn't used to suppress or target people who you think should fall into line into your way of thinking? I don't know. Can we do that? I hope so, because this way is looking pretty dismal. It's looking pretty bleak, and it's pretty shitty. And yeah, again, my prayers, my heart goes out to all those people suffering, the families, the mothers, the children, the husbands, the fathers, the brothers, the the mothers, the sisters. And it's just, we forget that they're individuals. They have names, they have a story, they have a life. They've done things wrong, they've done things right, they've done things to care for others, they've done things to sacrifice for others, they've done the things in hope for a better life for themselves. They've inspired, they've aspired. Yet we give them a label, and it's so easy to hate a label, it's so easy to fight a label, it's so easy to dehumanize a label. But if we can think of them as those thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals with a story, I think it just tears your heart apart. And it's really, really sad what's going on everywhere. This is whether it's the refugee camps which are being assaulted, whether it's the military governments that are uh, dominating and suppressing their population. In Burma, it could be in China, certain things are happening. Africa, it's happening. It's happening every fucking where in the world. And we're just making more noise. I don't know what to do. Anyhow, let me introduce today's guest, because I've got a friend from many years who's joining me on the episode for the first time on this podcast. I've got Aditi Mittal. She's a comedian, she's a writer, she's an actor, she's also an advocate for a lot of good causes. She's joining me today to talk about her story, talk about her journey in stand up as one of the early comedians, early women in comedy, and how that um, route and that path was for her in the early 2010s, navigating it, kind of fending for herself, trying to establish herself as a comedian, and what it was like being one of the early women doing comedy in the space, and where she is today, what she's done for herself, what she's chosen to drop along the way, what she's chosen to pick up along the way, the people she associates with, the work she does, the things she collaborates on, and the projects she's currently putting out, and the show she's going to be doing. She talks about the tour she has planned, and of course, the link to those tickets will be in the description. I'm sure you'll enjoy this conversation. And I enjoyed catching up with Aditi after a long time, and it's a fun conversation. And as always, I really appreciate you tuning in every week listening to this podcast. So you're in store for a fun, fun conversation. Thank you so much. As always, without further ado, here's my conversation with the one and only Aditi Mittal. Aditi, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure having you after many years talking to you, but also having you on the podcast for the first time.
Oh my God, Sandeep, I am so excited. I am so excited because the podcast is a medium for people who have faces like ours.
Hey, speak for yourself. I don't know what I look like, but apparently it's
Oh,
awesome.
I'm
I don't keep. There's a reason I keep my resolution down to 720p, and my camera isn't that good. Someone's like, you should buy a Canon 5D. I'm like, for what? To make my face more blurred, like for myself.
what are they going to see that they're not seeing in this resolution already?
Exactly, right. And next thing it's like, oh, and that's the thing I get, right? Because I don't get, rather, like, we've known each other, we've done shows with each other since I think 2011, and I think then it was mainly get recognized and get passed to a certain level of performance at these clubs which were established, like the Comedy Store and Laugh Factory, etc. But then obviously you were there, I was there, and this kind of group of comedians were there when AIB was born, or the various groups took shape. And I think for the most part, like me, you were a solo act, right? You didn't really align yourself with any group. But then,
Yeah.
of course, you've done your own thing with the internet and with all these kind of various routes that comedians took. So it's interesting to talk to someone 13 years later to see how that journey panned out.
Yeah. I'm also curious because I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. I'm
Yeah,
like,
which is good.
you're going to be my report card, Sandeep. I'm either going to go into deep depression after this, or like come out thinking, I'm okay. So this depends on your questions now. My mental health is in your hands.
I think a deep depression is a good thing if you can get out of it. It's just as long as it's not a prolonged, sustained, thing that kind of you're not able to escape. Because I think I wouldn't say depression, because of course clinically it's a big issue. But
Yeah.
I think things like anxiety, I think, are really good. You know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like goalposts or a benchmark to see where you are. Because sometimes it's just like a wake up call saying maybe this is not what
Yeah.
you want to be doing. But I think for the longest time you've at least initially, I think before Neeti came in, and I think there were a few ladies doing stand up, I think you were in the big lineups with mainly guys, like whether it was the British comedians. I think a few of them, like Mandy Knight, visited. How has it been for you? Because I have you had this struggle of saying I just want to be fucking funny, or do you have this thing of saying I want to be a woman who's fucking funny? Because they're two um different approaches.
So I've been convinced of the fact that I am the bomb, whether it's funny, talented, good looking. I have an overbloated sense of self like no other, and I'm finally like accepting it, right?
Hmm.
I think like from the start, I remember I remember feeling very lonely. I remember
Hmm.
feeling lonely a lot. I remember being very scared a lot. In
Yeah.
fact, I look back at a lot of things, and I realized that 80% of my reactions came out of fear,
Hmm.
came out of like you know a sense of isolation and a sense of fear.
Mm.
And I don't know, maybe I've not let go of that fear even now. Maybe I've learned to face that fear better, of just um of being able to even put my point of view out there.
Yeah.
I used to be very, very fearful of how audiences will react sometimes. Like, why when I'm off stage, I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna like be amazing, it's gonna be hilarious. And then as soon as I get up there, and if there's just one single like I'm like, oh no, this is horrible. I should kill myself.
Right.
So I had sort of that, sorry, I mean, trigger warning. I shouldn't have said that. I mean, I should K-word myself. But
No, I think it's fine. I don't think people. I
okay,
think it's. Yeah, I think people need to just chill. I think you don't have to apologize for that.
okay, okay. But I think, I sort of, I realized I had the worst of both worlds or the best of both worlds, depending on how you look at it, is where I had that like sense of uh, fluctuating sense of self worth. Whether it's like when a show goes really well, you're like, yeah, I got this,
Mhm.
and then when it goes really badly, you're like, this, I should stop doing this and like get married and have children, and that would be the only useful way that I can spend my life. Um,
Mhm.
I think I went through a lot. It was very up and down for me. I did not. I'll be honest. I did not enjoy the scrutiny. I think I did not enjoy the excessive scrutiny, which I know like a lot of people told me that it came across that I was really enjoying the scrutiny, and I did not. I did not really like constantly being um, sort of like pinpointed. Though I am, as an upper class woman, aware that I was getting a lot of opportunities because of the fact that they were like, "Arey, it's all men. Arey, we need one woman. Tore, woman ko phone kar." And I would get like added to lineups. So I understand, and I did get the advantage of my position, but I feel like mentally it wasn't. And again, in retrospect, because retrospect is king,
Of
is I
course.
felt like it took a big toll on me to sort of be the only person in those rooms, to feel like my voice didn't matter, to be like to talk and then have someone else talk over you, or to say something, be unheard, and then somebody else is saying the exact same thing and they getting heard more than me. It used to bother me a lot. It used to bother me
Yeah.
a lot.
No, there's some sense, right? Because of the situation, the time, the expectations from women at that point, or there were so many firsts, right? Because it was
Yeah.
firstly an international, um, I wouldn't say an art form which is international. It was there in India in different ways. Spoken word's been there, but the way it became very metropolitan, right? It came to these big
Yeah.
malls. It was English as a medium. You had to be seen in a certain way, and I think there was a certain attachment of elitism to the stand-up scene
Yeah.
when we started out. You have to you have to look a certain way. You have to dress a certain way. You have to speak a certain way. Um, and I think
I remember I was told not to wear a salwar kameez
yeah,
at a certain venue in Bombay.
yeah.
I used to go do my open spots, and I remember, and I was still in the open spot stage, and I was told at that point in time, please don't wear a salwar kameez and come. And I was like,
And similarly, Praveen, a friend of ours from Bangalore, he was told by one of the promoters of the club saying your accent's too thick. You either change it or people are not going to get you. And now he's doing Tamil stand up and been in it for years. So it clearly goes to show, I think, just to sort of put these two in contrast, right? From being one of the only women in the comedy scene back in 2010, 11, to now we have many, many women trying their hand at stand up who've, in fact, even become popular online with all these various shows. Do you feel the thing has changed? The expectations from women, uh, women as performers, what's expected from them, and also women as audience, what they expect from you? Or is there a certain flag that you have to wave, a certain thing that you have to be seen speaking about, because otherwise it's misrepresenting, I hate this word in the way it's used, your community of sisters in that way, because there's a lot of that, right? Our community of women. I think women are much broader and much more unique than just the
yeah.
label of community. That's why I asked you that.
So I think actually there's been a complete 360 from, sorry, not 360 because then it means the same thing. 180.
Yeah.
There's been a 180 from the way that things were at that point in time. Like at that point in time, again, it was like salwar, don't wear a salwar, don't speak in your thick Indian accent. Now it's the Hindi speaking and the Tamil speaking comics who
Yeah.
have like solid, audience bases, and the rest of us have to go abroad to perform.
Hmm.
But the I think the market has taken this thing, and I think 2011 was when Geo launched its cell phone and data service,
Yeah.
and that sort of changed the landscape of the Indian internet.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah.
and so what I mean, it's not only comedians, right? It's also influencers, and the kind of stuff that was coming out and that is coming out is so varied and so diverse, right? It To a very large extent, I don't think, and maybe it's also a function of when I was in my 20s that I cared. I
Yeah.
don't care anymore. Like, the whole like you have to speak for your community. I am more wary, when if there's something about shitting on a woman, I would second guess myself a bit. I would ask myself this question several times to be like, oh, should I do this or not? But I also have been shat on quite a bit. And I feel like if others are not employing that meter or others are not employing that filter, doesn't mean I don't have to.
Yeah.
So it is an entirely personal choice whether, if I want to or not. I don't. The larger community, has to take care of itself. It's not my job. It's not
Yeah.
my job to take care of other people, and I feel like that because also that comes back to bite you in the ass. That always
Yeah.
comes back to bite you in the ass. When you think that you can that you should be or that you can actually not even should be that you can um stand up for somebody who is not your person. I mean, that's again, I think it's a 20s to 30s thing where you're like, now my circle is me, it's a dot. And I'm going to protect myself because I know nobody's protecting me.
No, I think that's very important because there's a lot of this, you have to take this stance, you have to wear this hat, you have to sort of have this brand image. Like, in my case, a lot of people are like, be the blind comedian representing the disabled community. I'm like, do you know how vast and do you know how unique each individual within that community is? And maybe you can just say, okay, there are a million blind people, but that's one thing that connects us. There are so many differences within those human beings that are different. I might meet a blind person and not at all get along with him or her, but then I might meet someone who's
Yeah.
completely sighted and have amazing conversations. So I think there's this problem of a few voices that get this attention as the voice for that community, and then that power kind of
Yeah.
they either run with it or they do damage with it. And I think this is something which is very important that I recognize as well in what I wanted to say as we were talking
I've
before.
done both, I think.
Yeah, we've
I
done
think I've done
both. I
both.
mean, I
I've
didn't.
run with it and I've,
Yeah. No, what I was saying is I didn't want that label of the blind comedian because
yeah.
it's not just the responsibility, it's kind of claustrophobic, right? You feel like you have to stick within this fear of what you should be seen doing and not seen doing, pardon the pun, but at the same time it's
Sorry, I just got
yeah,
it.
no, but at the same time I think doesn't mean just because I can or you can, you just say the jokes or say insulting things, because that's something you said before we started recording, is you're a little bit more aware of what comes out of your mouth. Yes, of course, the primary focus being humor, making people laugh, but it also comes out with a little more um, thought to what you're saying, as opposed to when, in your early 20s, when you're doing anything to get attention and a laugh, right?
Yeah. Also, I think, I mean, we are also, we have to, the one thing that I think I can't stop thinking about is the changing of the landscape itself in the past decade. We sort of we got onto the internet. There were people there. It was nice. Then in 2014, 15 is when being on the internet becomes a job suddenly, where it's not just you talking about the food that your dad served you that day for lunch.
Mm.
Suddenly, it's brands are getting on the platform, and suddenly now your employers are looking at your tweets, and then suddenly now newspapers are like compiling tweets, and suddenly your tweet has become a news article. I genuinely was so taken aback by the economy of the online space and how
Yeah.
they dealt with people on social media, or how, because there would always be netizens say, and then there would be like 7 tweets, or like Twitterati says, and then there'd be like 12 tweets about what Twitterati and netizens are saying. And the fact that so much of what we were doing at that point in time was just us having fun, was actually mined for commerce from so many of these websites. It kind of blows my mind. It kind of blows my mind. And so now I know, I think maybe now because I'm aware of that system, I have pulled back because I'm like, you know what, I will not let my mindset or my personal life contribute to your economy. Even if it's like, I always, it little bit scares me when I see influencers mind their personal life, for content. But I'm like, dude, just be careful of this, please. I beg you, because
Yeah.
this could turn around and become a dangerous thing for you.
in some way none of that worked for me, because I did try, trying to beat to the first punch when it comes to a topic, a trending topic, whether it's this ban or that ban, or this scam or that scam. And I never was good at it, because maybe in hindsight that worked out well, because a lot of guys who did that were trying to do the first joke on a topic and go viral, have got into trouble because they have to go back and delete the tweet because someone's like, oh, this is in this context, that's not working, what they said those many years back. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I think, it's interesting to talk to you, a person who's kind of gone on a journey where you've changed, you've taken different decisions which have led you down different paths. At the same time, you've got, you collaborate with certain people that worked out, certain people that didn't work out. You've also taken certain leads and initiatives to help people. Like, I remember you being quite vocal to get women from different backgrounds on stage at one point. But I think what it is that there's this sense that you are expected, to sound a certain way. You're expected to play a certain role, whether it's the woman comedian who's shitting on men, or the feminist who's just pissed off in life, or the feminist who's a angry lesbian. I mean, I'm saying, this is not just you. This is even for, say, a guy from Bangalore.
None of the three, okay? I love men.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That there's this thing that, and that's what I wanted to come to, because it kind of coincides with that point you mentioned when you were fearful of the silence or the lack of laughter, and that kind of leads into this position where you weren't afforded the basic respect on that stage for whatever reason it may be. Did it make you more aggressive as a human being, or at least a persona of being, people perceive you as more aggressive because you had to take the stance and you had to kind of fight for this respect?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I think that it was a response to just the fear that I felt. It was a response to that. And then also, the moment people started being like, oh, you are like this, I was like, I'll show you how I am. If you think I'm like that, I'll show you triple of that. And
Yeah.
I think at some point I was just feeding into, and I remember having this epiphany about 4 years. No, maybe like in 2017. That was the first year that I did Edinburgh,
Yeah,
and
we were together there.
right, and that was the year that I sort of, I was like, at this point I have lost so much direction in what I'm doing, because I am either catering to the people who are like, oh, she usually says this, and that's why we like her, or to the people who are like, she usually says this, and that's why we hate her. And so I'm catering to the haters and the lovers to equal extent. And I realized I don't know what I was talking about. I this the last 3-4 years, just in terms of writing, have been really eye opening. I've realized the confines of stand up comedy, as a craft. Uh, and maybe a large part of me thinks that it's not the all confining craft that I thought it was. I think that's what it's realizing that stand up comedy is everything, but it's also not everything, has been my realization in the
Yeah.
past few years.
I think, there's almost this liberation that I, similarly experienced, right? Because I was so caught up, and you kind of resonated with what I felt is when you did do badly on stage, you see yourself as a bad human being or as a failure, as your worth
Yeah.
completely goes down the
Yeah.
shitter, right? But this label we call stand up, I grabbed onto it and didn't let go. And it's just like, the tighter you hold on to it, the more it kind of tries to push you away. And I realized since then, 2020 till now, you can be funny, and you can just have the label somewhere because it's something you can put on your website or something you can market yourself with. But uh, that's why I think what you just said, if it can be everything, yet it doesn't have to be as important as you make it out to be.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the moment
And I tell you,
Mhm. No, go on.
the one thing that also struck me is that I think why we were so up and down, why we fluctuated so wildly with our self respect and perception, was also because a bad show or like 7 bad shows in a row didn't just mean that you're a terrible person. It also sort of affected your social connections,
Yeah.
right? Because what a petty, embarrassing world we lived in.
Yeah.
Was that like, it's suddenly someone, if you do 7 shows badly, the three people, who you thought were your friends will suddenly stop talking to you because you're not, as you don't have as much social capital as them suddenly. Or, you're not as sort of this thing. And you're like, oh, I thought this was actually a friendship. But then you realize that, oh, now this, what is happening on stage is also affecting my off stage life. And then you have your own personal demons to battle. And so a combination of that, I think that's, I mean, it was a combination of all those things.
Yeah.
Um, that sort of led to the wild spikes and low lows.
And it's, something as petty as, before the show, like especially in a club where, you get to interact with the audience before and after the show.
Yeah.
People will come and be like, I really like your work. And then after the show, if you've not done as well, which is, of course, relative, it's relative, but at the same time, you can't run away from it because there are three people on the lineup and one person gets a louder laugh. It is what it is. But the worst is when the same
Yeah.
person comes and says, they walk right past you, go to the person who got more laughs. And they're like, why don't you join us at our table for a drink? And you're like, you mother, it's just, and I know people are like, yeah, you're as funny as your last show. You're as funny as you got to have sex. But at that point, you're just like, son of a bitch, that.
Oh my God, I love that. I mean, I don't love that, but it always cracks me up. Like, when you go to a show and then, like, I did like a show, I think last year. That was my last corporate show. Because I went on stage and they like greeted me with the wildest of applause. They were like, yeah, fuck. And I'm like, I got this.
Yeah.
And then when I walked off stage 30 minutes later, they were like,
Pol-
cool.
Polite applause.
I felt horrible.
Right.
But I was like, how did I get on stage? And like, how did it happen that they were more fans of me before I started doing my stuff?
Oof, that
And
burns.
they,
That burns.
it's so hurtful. It's so hurtful, but so funny.
But at least, Aditi, you
But
don't have an
hurtful.
audience for you which walked away because it started raining and you didn't realize, right?
Wait, when the fuck was this?
I
That's
did
so funny.
at a corporate many years back. It was the three of us, Praveen, Sanjay, and I. We go to this. Which company was it? I think it was one of those. Um, one of those Bosch, one of those things, and it was an outdoor event, and they'd covered the stage or
Yeah.
semi-covered the stage. And Sanjay goes up, he's hosting. I go on, and of course, and then I'm talking, and it starts off okay. I'm getting some laughs, and then it wasn't like thunder and rain like that heavy, but it was
Yeah.
sprinkling rain, right? And I'm going on, and I'm just like, this is not going as well. It started off okay, and then Sanjay like, buddy, they've all gone in, buddy. I'm like, fucking someone should have told me. And not even just
That's so
quietly
messed
moved
up.
on. I don't know how I didn't hear it. They moved the chairs. The entire event has relocated. I'm going on, going, your punchline needs to be changed.
Yeah. You're going back to your notes and being like, I wonder what didn't work. Oh, yeah,
Correct.
the audience was not sitting there. That's what
Correct.
didn't work.
Yeah. Open bar, rain, and audience missing. I think that might be three reasons.
What a crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, like, how does a self-respecting person climb out of that hole of self-hatred?
Yeah.
I
At
do
least
not
cut my mic,
understand.
right? At least the event guy should have cut
Yeah.
my mic. I would have heard that. Like, oh. No, do you think things have changed now? Because you mentioned the 180, which you've experienced, a
Yeah.
lot more women in the comedy um, career, comedy kind of space. And, I spoke to Azim on the podcast about this. I spoke to a few other people about this. And, for various reasons, the inputs have been interesting because each person now has kind of made peace depending on where they are in their career, or each person has explored these tools in different ways, whether it's the Instagram reels or whether it's the YouTube phenomena. But from a perspective of getting your jokes out there, right? One is, of course, do you do it as a marketing tool or do you use it now as a career tool? How is your
Ooh, that's interesting.
yeah, because the thing is, it's from what I've heard over the past few conversations with comedians who are still actively out there. Sorry, apologize for that's my dog. And I think that's the thing, right? Because even in that space, right? Like just like the live shows, just like how there you go from city to city, you go from festival to festival. There is a different career path there, and in India that is limited because of the number of rooms, as you mentioned, the number of venues
Yeah.
that are actively doing shows week in week out. That's almost zero now, except for maybe a couple in the country.
Yeah.
But now it seems like just like how we have an offline life and an online life, there's almost like an offline comedy and an online comedy.
Yeah.
And the online comedy seems to be where everyone is. and it seems to be a hybrid of what stand up is, because it's no longer long form, it's short form, unless of course you're popular, your fans come for you, and then you put it behind a paywall. So where have you been with this? How has it been for you, and where are you now?
So, I've actually been very lucky. I sold two specials to Netflix, one to Amazon Prime UK, and then, um, I managed to. I mean, and then my last 10 videos came out on Amazon Mini TV, which is a platform also native to Amazon, the
Hmm.
Amazon ecosystem, right? And so I've been very lucky as far as that is concerned, as far as selling my stage life online is
Right,
concerned.
right.
I've been very, very lucky. Having said that, I am such an old person when it comes to getting on like everyone's like do reels every day, and I'm like, you know what? I don't have the myself my self image. My skin is too terrible for me to get on like a camera every day for me to like be like, hey, I'm going to do some mindless thing with three puns in it.
Right, right,
Is
right.
something that I can't bring myself to do. And I've seen people, do it, and sort of like it again. It's all this like I, I, I keep thinking to myself, I will not dance for the algorithm.
Yeah.
And yet, that is what you need to do. That is what you need to do. Is you need to dance for the algorithm. There is space for the long form storytelling.
Mm.
There is space for all these things, but it is now largely fueled by what's happening online. So like if you do amusing sketches online, I know that like a bunch of influencers, if they put up a show, they will sell out in 5 minutes. What will they do live? That they will decide. But you
Mm.
know they will sell out in 5 minutes, whereas a comedian that's been working for a year on a special will still have to like be like, oh, hey guys, I'm working on this show, please come and watch, please come and watch, please come and watch. So I think that
Mm.
they're two different beasts almost. And um I am a terrible tamer of beasts, is what I've realized when it comes to the online
Yeah.
space.
No, I don't. I'm a little baffled as well, right? Because unless, of course, it's the big names, you hear stories like of Andrew Schultz picking up his entire career from being rejected by all these big platforms and putting up one clip every week of 3 4 minutes, and then now, of course, he's in the big league. Or you go watch your Dave Chappelle's and Amy Schumer's, or even the people who came out of Mad TV, or there are women now who are popular because they're funny. But then you look at someone now who's trying to start out, uh, and it just
Yeah,
seems like humor has changed, because you can't give the the performer, as an audience, doesn't the performer doesn't have time to mess up. They don't have time to, especially on
yeah.
these shorter platforms, they don't have time to make a mistake. They don't have time to reflect. They basically have to put 10 words really well woven or really well edited together, and that's in a
Sandeep,
way.
this is what you and I think, Sandeep. You don't know how mindlessly and thoughtlessly people are putting up things. My God, it will blow your mind, Sandeep. How without a thought in their heads people are putting up stuff. And we are only people who are like, oh, I should make something clever. I should make it thoughtful. I should make it hilarious.
Hmm.
Nobody thinking that. Nobody thinking that. Everybody just putting up stuff. And I think,
Yeah.
in fact, the other day, I think that the space to make mistakes is less. Um, but
No, what I was
it's
referring to that point is, if you have a good
oh
line, right?
sorry.
Say, no, I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you to a certain extent, where if everyone's a performer, then who the fuck's watching the performance, right? Because if
That's
every
a,
person.
if everyone's a content creator, who's content consumer? Yeah.
Exactly. But no, what I wanted to say is, like, sometimes, of course, we were wordy on stage, but it gave us a chance to explore, and maybe out of that bit, something else came off. But now it's like, if that 60 seconds or 48 seconds or 59 seconds, which you recorded at your open mic, which got laugh, it's literally you're like running after the laugh. Of course, we all love the laugh, but the
Yeah.
point is, we're running after the material which gets the laugh. It's almost like you're ignoring what gets you that laugh, but you're just running after those views, the virality or the possibility of virality. And if that does it, that's it. That bit is done. And so no longer is the
Yeah.
bit enjoyable to tell or fun to repeat in multiple shows, but it's like, it only has to serve one purpose, which is to go viral. And then I'm going to become famous for 48 seconds. Then I'm going to become famous for nothing else. So it's weird. I don't get it. So maybe it's coming from a place of ignorance. Maybe I don't understand the TikTok Reels game. But it's
Yeah.
what I want to know is, has it changed the performer, the present day stand up comedian?
Yeah, oh, this is a fantastic question. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. I think that, I think one, a lot more of the online world is being spoken about in the offline spaces.
Mm.
Like, there's the other day someone mentioned, like, I was standing in an open mic and someone was like, the other day means like a month ago. So somebody was like, hey, this is comedian habit now to be like, listen, I was on a flight this morning. No, you weren't.
No,
Okay,
you won't.
this
Yeah,
this this story happened a month ago when you wrote this set. Don't lie.
yeah.
But
You're lucky if it's in
um
the same annual experience, right? There are guys like, yeah,
um
I went to a friend's place last week. For the past 8 years, the same bit has been last week.
and I think that, gee, actually, the fact that you brought that up is interesting because there was a lot of stagnation. Also, there was a lot of, like, there were these comics who were doing the same material for the past 12 years,
Yeah,
and so they also were not able to find a footing in the online space.
yeah.
Um, but then now there are comics who, like, you now there's no space to develop only material.
Mm,
Now it's like, even if you try and develop a 45-minute, you have to at least put out like 6 minutes of it, or 8 minutes of it, or 12 minutes of it, just,
yeah,
or simultaneously develop a freaking set. It's a little bit of it's a little bit of a task, right?
right, right.
Um, I think that it's sort of weird wildly between the two.
Uh-huh.
Fuck, what is that?
No, you're
So I'm
referring
sorry.
to someone you were talking to at a show last month.
Sorry, no, I was talking, Hanji. I wasn't talking to them because I don't talk to anybody at shows now except the audience.
Right.
Oh wow, it's making me sound like a complete asshole.
No, but it's
But
it's it's also how, honestly speaking, stand up is a solo thing, and it's nice to gel and vibe with other comedians. And but I feel that's what we had in Bangalore in 2012 to 15, right? We had this group where we would write or bounce ideas off after open mic. Someone be like, "This might work better," and that was good. But that was that, right? After that, it's just gone. And I think that's
yeah,
perfectly fine. I think if you have splinter groups, it's fine. Like, it doesn't really have to be one united comedy front against the audience. None of that bullshit. But if if one group is trying to put down the other group, like, there's some stupid
yeah,
stuff like, oh, Hindi comedians go to this room, Kannada comedians go to this room. I'm like, see, if the audience is coming for that language, fair enough. But you can't say that because you speak English, you can't come to this show, or vice versa. Like, if you speak, Kannada, you can't come from English. I mean, I think that is this, when we say inclusivity, right? Unless the audience doesn't understand the language, like if you have a hardcore marketed show for a certain language, and the person coming is speaking French at a Tamil show, okay, I get it.
yeah.
But otherwise, I don't see the reason to this thing. So anyway, um I interrupted you about being alone at shows. I went on a
Oh
tangent.
yeah, sorry. I was watching somebody and they were talking about a scandal that happened online recently, right?
Hmm.
And I was stunned at the level of people who knew what they were talking about.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, because the online world has sort of pervaded reality, or at least for the people who watch stand-up comedy, it is such an incredibly active part of reality. And I think what is bothering me about this is that we have gone now from, you know, original storytelling to hot takes on the internet being translated into stand-up.
Uh-huh.
And it feels very insincere, and it doesn't feel like it's anything to do with you as a performer. And it just makes the whole idea of stand-up comedy really bleak. And like, then it's like, because I want to hear about you. I want to hear about, I mean, I saw what you saw online, and that thing that you said on that is very funny. But what
Yeah.
is, how you feel about it? I feel like that impersonality has come. Impersonality, that's not even a word. There's an impersonalness to stand up that is pervading from the online space, which
Mm.
I'm
It's surprising you mentioned that. It's nice to hear it from someone who's younger than me, because I sometimes I worry, not worry, but I'm aware of the fact that I might sound jaded because I've been not in it for too long. It's just that I also sometimes think, is my perspective too restricted? when it comes to looking at the internet or content coming out of people who, frankly, I don't know if I'll not get along with, but I just don't understand some of the take on this content. But
Yeah.
I was talking to Nivi, my wife, this morning, because you met Nivi, and I was talking about these
Yeah.
people who are super famous, right? Like people who are giving self-help advice, people who are these rock stars in some way, right? When it comes to
Yeah.
conscious living and like I call them like the they're like crazy, like like Jay Shetty or someone like that.
Yeah.
They're so popular. I think Jay Shetty came to Bangalore and he had a huge fan following at his show, and I think he's done a lot of good when it comes to his books and helping people through his videos. And this but is not in a negative way. It's this idea of, are you expected to, when you say authentic way of living, your authentic self, I has the internet authentic changed from real authentic?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, I don't know, because I feel like, do you have to constantly have this image about you, and you're on it all the time? Because I mean, technically, as you said, the internet will not leave you. I mean, by the internet, I don't mean this conspiracy kind of internet, like this dark force which is out to get you, but I mean anyone in any country and even in India, any city is connected all the time, and they're one click away from
Yeah.
putting you at any point. Say they love your work and they come and see you at some point. They come for your show, but they might see you at coffee, or they might see you at the grocery store, might see you at the gym. They want that version of quote unquote authentic
Yeah.
Aditi, and if it's not what
Yeah.
what suits what story you've been telling, what happens then?
That's very true. Uh, that's actually interesting. I mean, and so here's the thing, right? I have taken advice from a million people
Mhm.
about what to do online, right?
Yeah,
Because I, I'm not, I can't get online every day. I can't sort of this thing, and then I also don't want to do anything too mindless. Like I don't
yeah,
want to be like, oh my god, guys, मेरे को तो इतनी नींद आती है कि मैं ना कुंभकर्ण की तरह हूँ और मैं ना इतना सोती हूँ कि मेरे को just what, okay?
yeah,
I find myself cringing when it comes to that shit, and so I've asked a million people about what I should do,
yeah,
and
yeah,
a million of them are like, "Listen, Aditi, put up a reel every day, and or put up like a post every day, or like tweet multiple times a day, or whatever." And then the second thing is to talk about what you know,
yeah,
to talk about what you know. And now, if I start off knowing about lip gloss, right? My first 12 reels are going to be about lip gloss. One of them is going to like hit it, right? They're going to be like, wow, this girl, you remember that lip gloss thing she did?
yeah,
Now, your 13th reel is going to be about headphones. You're screwed
yeah,
because now the algorithm doesn't recognize you. They sort of um, like you've suddenly gone away from what has been deemed your genre,
yeah,
and then and because you have to be in people's faces every day. I know, I get like you were talking about influencers who are giving out advice, right?
yeah,
They're like 25-year-olds who are like telling 60-year-olds how to save for retirement.
yeah.
But because you have to post every day, you have to just then you're like milking the bottom of the barrel, right? Which doesn't even have any nipples. You're just like, okay, fuck it. What can I pull out of this, this empty sack of mine that, and so you end up becoming more and more a sort of, what is the word? A sort of parody of yourself
Yeah.
by the end of your career. And that, you're right, that is not very authentic.
And you know what? That's something I found, right? Whether you were saying you either have audience that hate you or love you, and even in that way, you either have material that hates on or dotes on someone. Like it, um, you see sometimes with artists and comedians, or even with content which is happening, right? Either it's like male bashing, or it's anti-feminist, or it's like, oh my god, wedding marriage jokes, or whatever it may be. I
Yeah.
think, and this is something, again, I wanted to run by you, is like, are we performing anymore? Number one, I think we've acknowledged we don't no longer doing it because at least the modern for content creation, very few are doing it for the joy of creation and the joy of laughter. I think it's just like, so
No,
we've
no, money,
acknowledged
money, money,
money,
money,
exactly, right?
money. Give me
So
money. I like money.
so
Money.
we no longer doing it because we enjoy it. We want it. Um, the idea is we're doing it for the audience, so the audience reciprocates, we go big, we get money, right? But now there's a third
Yeah.
element to this. Are we even doing it for the audience? Because does the audience actually have control over what they see, or do they have do they see what is being fed to them by the algorithm? So finally, are we performing for
Yeah.
the algorithm and not for the people we
I mean,
want
we're
to?
performing for the gatekeepers for sure. We're
Yeah,
performing for the gatekeepers for sure, right?
yeah.
Oh my God, this is so cool. So like, and it kind of comes back to that whole thing where it's, oh my God, Sandeep, you're so insightful. Stay the fuck away from stand-up comedy, please. I beg you.
I think
It's
stand up
just,
is staying away from me. So it's I
um,
don't know if it's a mutual agreement, but you know what?
shut
I
up.
yeah, it's just one of
Shut up.
those.
I will be thrilled when you get back on stage. I'm letting you know this. Um, but no, you're right in that we are actually, because the algorithm has a mind of its own, right? The algorithm has decided कि मतलब one day Zuckerberg wakes up and says कि मेरे को gas हो गया. Now we will prioritize video content. Um, and then what ends up happening is that there are layers of gatekeepers. There are layers of like, okay, so the people of, XYZ social media company will decide, okay, they're going to pick 6 people who, have blown up over the pandemic, say, for example. And then they've made them these huge stars.
Yeah.
And, now you're like, oh shit, now none of them have any discernible talent, but you're
Mm.
still sort of milking it. You're still seeing them everywhere. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I kind of, you get that there are also representatives of the gatekeepers, because they also, maybe it's the numbers that they're closely associated with, maybe they're fucking Chirag Paswan's children. I mean, Chirag Paswan's a very niche example, but like maybe they're a producer's children, maybe they're,
Uh-huh.
friends of a celebrity, and therefore blah blah blah. You're right that all those factors do come into play. You're not really ever only performing for your audience, and you're definitely. I don't think we're all performing for the love of performance all the time. I mean, I would say I still think maybe I've because I've learned to control my emotions. I think maybe 80% of the time is when I'm really, really enjoying myself and doing it for myself, and then I'm loving it so much that I'm pouring myself into it. But 20% is you're still dancing to somebody else's things.
Yeah, which I find, this is another reflection of the audience, right? Do people even know what they want anymore? Because there will be someone who's like, "Oh, I love Eddie Izzard's bit on squirrels climbing trees," and I'm like, "That's funny, right?
Mm.
You're good." And then someone's like, "Dave Chappelle is the goat," right? And next thing they're like, "Did you watch Zarna Garg? She's hilarious." I'm like, "See, maybe she is. I haven't watched her stuff, but are we expected to say these things as audience? Like, my God, if you say I didn't like that bit by Dave Chappelle, that means you are a trans gender activist. Like I'm saying, there is just like how you have to get someone's attention as a performer by sticking to say lip gloss and for 50 reels lip gloss, even as an audience. Now, are you expected to agree with the popular sentiment, which is either hate a comedian for you know their rigid views on LGBTQ, or celebrate them because they're the anti-establishment? So
I think that we're all allowed to like, the dichotomies where I simultaneously, I'm a huge fan of Dave Chappelle, and I am a huge fan of, you know, CID.
right, right,
I think the multitudes exist within us. I do think that there is a almost drive where it's like success breeds success, and then it just becomes a circle of like, oh, this thing is really popular right now, so a lot of people are going to like it, and then because of that it's going to get a second season, and then a lot more people are going to like it, and then because of that it's going to get a third season, even though the quality of it is rapidly deteriorating.
mm,
That thing is going to have a long shelf life because 5 people liked it in the beginning, right? By that merit, and then it's always this thing. Okay, then 5 articles come out. Yeah, actually, this season was the best.
yeah,
There's,
yeah,
next season, 25 articles will come out because they have bigger marketing budget. And I think to a very large extent, success breeds success. Where it's, that creator, 45 of their videos are at 1 million views. Now you go watch 47 of them, but you don't see anything special. But then you automatically, because everybody else is like, nahi, nahi, bahut hi badhiya, you start
yeah,
liking this person and
yeah,
you join the fandom. I do think that also because, I mean, they're a less religious generation.
yeah,
We tend to want to attach ourselves to these fandoms. Like you see the Swifties and a lot of superstars having very, very dedicated, angry fans who'll come at you,
Yeah.
the stan culture, if you will. And I
Yeah.
think that is a sort of replacement for uh, just a lost sense of community. I think we have to find ourselves new things to coalesce around, whether it's celebrities or comedians or singers, that remains to be seen. I do also think by that merit that there is a weird sort of, and maybe it's only an Indian thing. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you if it's happening abroad. I went to watch Trevor Noah, who was performing in Mumbai recently.
Oh, he
Before I
had a
went
bad
for
episode in Bangalore. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Anyway, go on.
yeah.
I
Which
want
we
to hear
spoke
the story.
about to much hilarity in the Bombay show as well.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go for the show, I'm standing outside waiting in line, and then I hear somebody say something about the show that happened in Delhi. Okay.
Right.
And I hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, all he did was 45 minutes of crowd work in Delhi." Yeah,
Mm.
I was like, "Cool." Then we go in to do this show. We're going to watch the show, and it's amazing. I really had a wonderful time. He's a
Mm.
delightfully funny person with a very astute take on
Mm.
a lot of current things that I even think like a lot of comedians have not managed to put their finger on. Indian comedians have not there's a lot of things that he spoke about that I feel like even Indian comedians have not been able to put their finger on directly.
Yeah.
And so I was quite impressed with that. He did about 45 minutes, 50 minutes of the show was about 1 hour, 15 minutes long. He had a 10-minute opening act. He did about 50 minutes on India. And he talked
Nice.
about the usual stuff. Okay. He talked about, Taj Mahal and lack of personal space and traffic and all this stuff, right? But it was good jokes on the Taj Mahal and traffic and lack of personal space.
Yeah.
And we walk out from that show and I am delighted. And, we go back home and then I'm just, on Twitter. And then I suddenly see a tweet from somebody saying, Bangalore people, y'all missed nothing. He
Right.
did only 45 minutes of crowd work.
Mm.
And I was like, 1 second, I had heard of this criticism of the show before I went in for the show. And now here's a Bombay person literally copy pasting that criticism, into into what has happened in the Bombay show. And I was in the audience. I know he didn't do 45 minutes of crowd work. If you ask the audience, hey, do you guys like potatoes? That's not crowd work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Crowd work would be what's
Here's
your name? Where are you going? And then and a bunch of people are responding, yeah, we heard it was a wretched mess. And I was like, why is everyone like, are we not just enjoying things for this? Because everyone wanted you should come and deliver a new Netflix special over here. He's on tour,
or
dude. The guy's on freaking tour. Like, let him tour.
or do
And it
what you
just
do on
felt
Comedy
like,
Central. Do what got you famous. Right. Right.
yeah. And they're like, no. And I feel like there was just this need to not like what he did, which I found really weird. I was like, and it's not like people were booing in the show or like people were sitting silently miserable in the show. Everyone was laughing. So I couldn't even understand where that sort of visceral, like Bangalore people, you didn't miss anything. He just did
Yeah.
45 minutes of crowd work. I was like, dude, what? I couldn't understand that. And
So
I
isn't this
couldn't
the
understand the people
problem?
agreeing. And
The idea of being truly international. So, sorry, just want to add on to your point, is to be a person of the world. You travel
yeah,
everywhere and do shows for those people in that country, and they could be mixed. They could be Indians with expats, wherever, as opposed to going from India around the world for other Indians who've gone from here,
yeah,
right? So that
yeah,
clearly is the way, because someone will be like, my God, this guy's bit on India in Australia for Indians when he's come from Bombay. It was great, as opposed to having the balls to come to a foreign country
yeah.
and take up
Talk
observations
about
and
what's
do it well.
happening there.
That is something
Yeah,
which is a skill that comes with honing your craft over years, whatever it may
yeah,
be, right? But
yeah,
are we restrictive to one person, one idea? Stick to that, otherwise we're going to
yeah.
penalize you. It almost sounds like that.
I mean, and the criticism was almost like, where are the insightful stories and I was like, dude, just let him be now. He's telling jokes. He didn't tell you he didn't like the show is not called like insightful stories by Trevor Noah. It's called Off the Record Comedy Tour by this thing. He
Yeah.
made us laugh. His job has been done.
Yeah.
But no, he didn't, I'm like, why are you asking a guy that is showing up from the US to give you like, dynamic insights on the country that you're living in? So y'all won't go watch an Indian comedian give you all dynamic insights. Usko tum गाली दोगे बैठ के. लेकिन ट्रेवर
Yeah.
नोआ ने मेरे को इंसाइट क्यों नहीं दिया? अरे यार,
And
क्या
2 years,
चाहिए
3 years
तुमको?
back, the audience didn't know what crowd work was. Now suddenly there's some
Yeah.
3 clips which have gone viral of this guy doing crowd
Yeah.
work, and we're like, crowd work?
Yeah.
I mean, if I see, there's another extreme, right? When you say hello to the audience, it's not crowd work. But again, I remember when we were doing stand up, everyone would copy this, give me a cheer if you're doing well, which would go to the
Yeah.
extent like, give me a cheer if you're wheatish. I'm like, everything we go extreme, right?
Wait, who was that?
Some
Who
comedians, give
was
me a
that?
cheer if you're lower middle class. I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, stop at the point, right? Give me a cheer if you're coming from work. Okay, but give me a cheer. Like after the 15th, give me a cheer. Like,
We used to rag Atul a lot, Atul Khatri.
correct,
We would
correct.
rag the hell out of him to be like, friends,
But I
give me a
thought, yeah,
cheer
give me a cheer if
if
you're
you are breathing
wheatish.
today.
That's a bit much, right?
Wheat is funny.
So I'm saying that's the new thing, right? Like if someone says, "Hi, what do you do for work?" Like, "Oh, he's doing crowd work." Like they completely disconnect because the reel is over
Yeah,
in their head. The 40 seconds is
yeah,
gone.
yeah.
So it's crazy how people are really unable to. I think it's such a weird. It's almost ironic, right? You are flooded with information in a time like no other,
Yeah,
yet you don't have the attention span to absorb that information because you've been conditioned to absorb it in certain bites of information. So even when you're
yeah,
listening to a 1 hour, 2 hour long conversation, you've made your mind up in the first 30 seconds. You're watching
yeah,
a movie, you are influenced by what that guy's done, and next thing you're going to go and either find people who agree with you, who are going to celebrate you for your idea, or who are going to shit on you for your observation about that movie because someone else would be like, you know what, that movie Oppenheimer was great because of so and so. This one's acting, and you're either falling into that group, or you're like, you know what, screw Nazis, and you'll find someone for that, or you'll
yeah.
be like, yeah, yeah. You know,
Love you Nazis, and then
yeah.
suddenly, wait. I hope this nobody never edits how just love you Nazis, but
No one's going to be going to make it unclippable this part because like say Aditi
nice,
Mittal.
nice. Love you Nazis. Um, no, but I think there's also like I feel like now we're all just waiting for someone to have an opinion,
Yeah,
and then we latch on to that.
yeah,
So if that person has decided that Bangalore didn't miss anything because Trevor Noah did only 45 minutes of crowd work, ha, 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 ha,
yeah.
then that's it. That's what everybody's going to talk about, and that's how everyone's going to deem it. And Trevor Noah doesn't care because he's going to come back and sell out another auditorium
Absolutely. And you know what?
by
This is my future prediction, Aditi. AI is not going to take our jobs. The way people are right now, AI is going to take over our minds. And by that, I don't mean like some, future sci fi shit. I mean, literally, it is going to feed us stuff like this. It's already happening, as you said, right? It's under the
Mhm.
guise of someone's tweet saying it's crowd work. But that's it. We don't want to
No.
think for ourselves. We don't want stuff that is not fitting in the way I'm comfortable consuming it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like even the sort of space for conversation has contracted so much. We were just sitting and talking about it the other day, and this current dispensation, the current Indian government is does a shit ton of things that you cannot agree with.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, the treatment of minorities, the treatment of women, the kind of people that they're giving tickets to parliament to, it's absolutely unhinged. I mean, the compromise on most of our judicial and executive institutions, terrible.
Mm.
And then the other day I'm so stupid. Out loud, I was talking about, I said, I mean, it's understandable that India's going to abstain on a vote when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war
Mm.
because India has a shared cultural context and history with Russia, and that is not a relationship worth throwing away. Because they are being pressured by countries that have never really upheld the democracy that they claim to spread.
Yeah.
And oh my God, 30 people in the room just turned to me like, what? And I was like, oh, there's no space for that. You can't
Right.
even say that, oh, that thing that they did may not have been terrible. But of course, everything else they do is also terrible. But that
So you
may
said
not
that
have
on
been terrible. And
stage.
suddenly there's no
Yeah.
space.
Right,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you have had an opinion which is the anti-present government and for various
Yeah.
reasons. But you turning around and saying something positive is not processed by them. So that means you almost betrayed them?
Yes, immediately. I mean,
Mm.
immediately people were like, how dare you? Even if I ever like if I the I mean like the last whatever 3 months ago I put out a reel where I said bench,
Mm.
and then people were like, did not expect this from you, and
Oh.
we're unfollowing you. And I was like, you know what? Okay, like I get it. And I'm not going to argue back and I'm not going to be like, but I'm a person that has, subtleties and shades and this thing. I'm just like, I understand. I respect your decision. Now, whenever anyone says anything to me, I'm just like, I respect your decision.
Yeah, because
And
Aditi, you don't have to be, you got it wrong. You're real authentic. You got to be internet authentic, bro. You got to be that person who's just the same. You got to, you know what? I'm making a career choice for you. You need to be the lip gloss girl.
next 64 reels I'm posting as a collab with you, Sandeep.
Yeah, the lip
Enjoy.
gloss girl, and there's no matte finish on that. Yeah, that's your tagline. I've given you both. You get good to go. Oh, but it's no, you know, I find it, baffling because I haven't, gone viral, and sometimes these questions or these ponderings might come across as a bitter person who's not gone. But
No.
I just get, with so much out there, with everyone having millions and thousands of hundreds of thousands and millions of followers, millions of views, what is actually being absorbed? I mean, when I hear the story of, say, Zakir Khan, right? Coming from Indore, he started a little after us. He was doing shows, and I remember him hustling, doing the small rooms. He would come for the pajama fest. He was there, and he was with the green room. We were chatting, and Zakir and I, our conversation was always weird because he would always speak to me in Hindi, and I would always speak to him in English because I couldn't understand, and I don't speak Hindi. And still, we got along because we would get the essence of what we're trying to communicate. But then his
Yeah.
story to then the AIB thing which launched him to now doing Madison Square Garden, that is brilliant, right? For me, that is
Yeah.
so encouraging to hear, of a storyteller taking his story from Indore to the biggest stages in the world. That is international. I mean, who
Yeah.
goes for that show? I don't know. In the sense, is it only Indians or are they cute? Because I'm assuming because it's in Hindi, it'll be mainly Indians. But
Yeah.
that is being launched to the world stage. And then, yeah, people bickering over, my camera at the open mic was knocked over because your camera came in the way. I'm like, what the
Oh my God. Listen, can you please recount for your listeners that fight? I will never
which one?
forget. Somebody punched somebody, because they walked in front of their camera. Oh my God.
No, I don't know this punching bit because I know the bit about a guy staggering out because he was hammered after, I think, when Papa CJ and I and Sanjay were doing a show, and he was so smashed he walked straight into the tripod and ruined the recording for someone. But
Hilarious.
I don't know this punching bit. Do you know?
This punching story this was obviously somewhere in Delhi. A comic was having a,
Aditi, I'm unfollowing you for that statement. Anyway,
there's the two comics, and I mean these were two comics who didn't have any love lost. They kind of were like didn't like each other. And again that dynamic always bleeds all over the place.
right.
So these two comics didn't really like each other, and then they were on the same lineup, so they just dicks to each other while they're sitting backstage, and sort of psyching each other out before they get on stage, and then they get on stage, and then one of them is doing it, and one of them had a recording, like so he had paid for a camera and everything to be set up,
Oh,
and the other comic had finished by then, and then I don't know whether it was deliberate or not, but this person walked across, like while this person was performing on stage, walked in front of the camera and stood there.
oh. I
And that in front of the center cam, okay? In front of the
oh,
center cam.
he clearly knew
The
what he was
center
doing.
4K cam. Okay,
Oh,
where you would be able to punch in and out if you wanted angles. But hey,
oh.
at some point, the guys, they started talking to each other, and then one of them punched the other one. I do not know which one. I think it was the guy who paid for the recording, who was on stage, punched the guy who was in front of the camera. I do not know, but there was a punch thrown, and I thought that was absolutely exciting.
The rivalries also got more aggressive, right? Because a lot more at stake. You've spent 40, 50 grand on
Yeah,
recording. I remember it
yeah,
being a lot more innocent when we started out, in running shows, or at least trying to get people on board to the idea of comedy, right? They're like, what, you want to give us, you want us to give you an evening where we give three of you a mic and we trust you with that to entertain the audience? Are you fucking crazy? To now where people are like, I have fucking 50,000, rupee camera setup. You know what? Such a cute thing. It's almost cute when I recollect this
yeah,
scene. There was a comedy night,
yeah.
which we were trying to convince the venue of keeping as a weekly occurrence, right? And it was a bar back then. I think it's called Banana Bar or Banana Beach or something. And I couldn't make it for the gig, so Sanjay, Praveen, and two other guys or three other guys wanted to get on stage. And I remember that they were not really appreciating the comedy evening, the venue, the staff, the audience, like four people or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I remember this bar had water body inside, like a stream running through it or something like that. This is what, again, he was,
Okay.
I wasn't there. And apparently, while one of the guys was performing, I mean, he didn't really do it too long. I think he did 2, 3 shows. He was performing. One of the waiters walked behind him or walked in front of him. I think front of him, obviously, and he pulled the wire or something. So this guy got really upset, and during the performance, has scolded the waiter, and the waiter scolded him back. So then the waiter, this guy pushes the waiter. The waiter pushes this guy, and this guy falls into the stream. I mean, all this during.
That's horrible, but
See,
hilarious.
isn't it cute?
But horrible.
It's cute, right? I don't know why it feels
Yeah.
cute compared to this Delhi
Very
story of like
charming.
them riling each other up
Yeah.
and then intentionally. It just feels like
Yeah.
it was miserable. Like there've been
Yeah.
shows where Sanjay and I've gone, the guys. I mean, literally halfway, we were waiting to get on stage, and the guy's like, "Okay, are you going to perform in Hindi?" I'm like, "Dude, we don't speak Hindi." He's like, "But I told you that the audience doesn't understand English." I'm like, "Why the fuck would you call us then, right?" And then we literally fumble through 10 minutes, and you don't get a laugh, obviously. And then the CEO's wife cracks a Santa Banta joke and gets a huge standing
And everyone,
ovation, and he's like,
yeah.
"That is comedy. I'm not paying you." I'm like, "See, you've dealt with it." But
Yeah.
I just don't know where it is. I mean, I don't have a critical
You know,
negative take on where we are today. I'm just trying to understand, as a person who's generated content, who likes laughter, who likes going for gigs, even as a non-comedian. I've gone for shows where Jonathan Arthur has made me piss myself, or whoever
yeah.
it may be. But it just feels that we kind of are going everywhere with the filter of the internet between us and the real world, with, you know, like we don't see the world for what it is in front of us with our physical senses, but we have to filter and
Mm.
process it through these Snapchat filters, Insta filters, the reels, and what those translate with the comments. Instead of saying, "I love the show," we want to hear a comment about it on these platforms, or how many views it got on these platforms, and
Mm.
and through those results, we want to either validate it, appreciate it, celebrate it, or follow it and become fans of it.
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't even say it's the filter of the internet. I would just say, I think that one, though you are right, is that we started off in simpler times, which is why I think you and I are old timers, so we can talk about art. You
Mm.
know what I'm saying? When we started out, we were unbounded by what the audience wants to hear, or the quality and type of audience that was coming for these shows.
Yeah,
We were not bound by that, which I think people who have come after us have been, right?
yeah,
They want to know if they can get on Comic Stan, because they know once they get on Comic Stan, then Oriel will take them on tour, because then something else will happen, because then some big OML artist will retweet their tweet.
yeah,
There is like everybody now, the road to success is not the art
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
And I think that is one, and that's why the stakes are so much higher. I feel like in fact, I think my major turning point with stand up came when it suddenly became a job, and I saw that people didn't care about the art. I think that it was my first layer of disillusion, as a comedian.
yeah,
I mean, disrespect me all you want, call me a piece of shit, I'm garbage, etc., etc. Say, why the fuck are you here? No problem.
yeah,
But the complete lack of acknowledgement of the art itself,
yeah.
and by art I mean like stand-up comedy, or the art of being funny or being clever. Um, I feel like that is something that it's through the filter of commerce, and it sucks. But I'm putting my QR code in the description of the. I'm going to keep it here. Just GPay me $50.
It's no longer what you say or how you say it. It's at who says it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there was that one really interesting observation that somebody made recently, where they were like, you don't retweet a tweet, you retweet the account.
yeah.
You retweet the account of the person that has put out that tweet. It hardly matters what the tweet is.
Correct. Like, you might have a gem of a joke which might go unnoticed, but
Yeah.
if it comes out of, say, 10 famous comedians in India, then that joke's suddenly
Yeah.
epic, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God, the other day, and I'll tell you this, maybe Sandeep, I do believe that your niceness was your weakness. I do believe that, Sanjay and Praveen had such a nice thing going. Because I remember when I came to perform in the beginning in Bangalore,
Yeah,
I was in touch with all three of you. Like,
yeah,
I would be like, oh, Praveen is not here. Okay, let me, hit up Sandeep. And then, you'd be like, okay, there's a room here. You can go perform here. And then Sanjay would be like, oh, I'm coming to watch. And it was y'all were very forthcoming and very kind to each other and to others. And I do think that at that point in time, and maybe even now, but now it happens in different ways. And I think the women also use those covert ways, is when now it's about power. When
Mm.
now, in fact, the bigger dick you are, the
Mm.
more, people will be like, oh, this person, like, they surely are this thing. Or if there's someone that's too nice, then they're like, oh, this person is, gade hain. Oh, sabko, chance dete
It's a
rehte hain.
walkover,
Don't
yeah.
listen to them. Ha, he's a walkover. And I think
No, and
that,
our thing was also we kind of we did that, and there were regrets later. We got frustrated, and as you said, that fear became aggression, right? When I would get drunk and talk
yeah,
shit, it was from a place of like we tried, and that's
yeah,
why all those things kind of came to pass, and I kind of looked at all of it for what it was, and withdrew from some of it, made peace with some of it, acknowledged some of it, and decided what I want from a lot of it and what I would choose to do going forward, even when I do get back on stage. It's no need to kind of just say, oh, the market demands you to be an asshole. You have to be one. If you can still do what you want, but learn. And I'm actually, 2024, when I do get back, I'm going to look at from 2009 to 2020 as 11 years of teaching me how to become a stand-up comedian when I go back on stage. And that
yeah,
admission is a lot of fear. It was like, shit, are you going to undo or forget everything? No, not forget, but
yeah,
you know how we were when we got that first stage spot. You want that feeling
yeah.
again with all the information that and learning and experience you had.
Ooh, of the 11 years. Dude, but I'll tell you this. I feel like one of the things that we did not do during that time was also protect ourselves,
Yeah.
because we thought that giving of ourselves would um, either get back that much in return, or that that people would appreciate that,
Mm,
when it's really not. Like, in fact, yesterday I was talking to another comic, and she's a woman,
mm,
and she was just telling me about the experience she had. And it was just a guy who came with like 11 of his friends. And she's like, oh, I went to try out some material. And then this guy was there with 11 of his friends. And he just, like, he went on stage. And she was hosting. He went on stage. He did his bit. She walks out. She gets back on stage after him. And the last thing he says is, हाँ तो अभी मेरा तो हो गया अभी ये इंग्लिश बोलने वालों को तो बोलो कि भाड़ में जाए लेकिन आई एम सच अ बिग गाय दैट आई एम गिविंग द माइक बैक टू हर. And I was
mm.
like, oh my God, that kind of like empty antagonism.
I mean, it's not even a
Um,
male thing. It's just cringy. Cringe. It's a horrible.
but and men do it more often. Let's face
Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah. I suppose so. I
Even
mean,
like even me at my most aggressive, I think was not as bad as some of the shit that dudes telling me like commenting on my tits while I'm walking on stage, or like calling me a bitch while I'm walking off stage. It just it sort of culminates, and I think I didn't protect myself at that point. I was just you let it affect you.
yeah,
And I think the smarter thing that I've walked into now is that I don't let, like, you want to talk shit about me, go right ahead. It's
yeah, yeah.
no water off my back,
And
that kind of
I
thing.
don't even think those shows are there anymore. See, if you belong to a certain clique, you get access to certain rooms. I think that's what is
Yeah.
upsetting, right? You can't just go to any city and walk on stage at a room where you can apply for a spot or request for a spot
No,
or
no.
get.
You know what I love about produce? Like, I think that changed in stand-up comedy, that now producers think of themselves as like producers who are not even remotely comedians, but
Yeah,
have the ego of comedians.
yeah,
I
yeah,
find that really funny.
yeah,
I'm like, you have a building, like that's your, or like you like run a room.
yeah.
You're not, there's no need for you to be this much of an
Oh,
asshole. Calm down.
I think it just became, too much too soon when it comes to the money being thrown at stand up, and now it's suddenly dried up. So the few who did make it are now kind of just going with the flow. But I think things will change. So
Yeah,
anyway, on that note, because I'm going to hopefully start this move back to getting on stage soon. But
yeah.
what's for Aditi Mittal? What's in the pipeline? What can people who love your work expect from you? Not the ones who heard you say Benchot, but the rest of them, the rest who are willing to give you another chance, Aditi, because you know what, they are the
Mm.
forgiving type, and you can't go around doing this. But I hope Zoom doesn't alter the sarcastic tone in my voice to an AI sounding he's just a douchebag. But so what's in store?
Listeners, he is a douchebag.
He is, yeah.
But what is in store? I am, in the coming year, I am hopefully going to be going back on tour. I'm in Australia from February. I'm in the UK in March. I am in the US in April of
Nice.
2024. So I've got that planned. But till then, I have got therapy,
Hmm.
and I've got and I think I'm going to focus. Hey, after this podcast, Sandeep, maybe this is the trigger. I'm going to make a reel every day.
Awesome. Looking
I'm
forward to
going to
that.
make a reel every day and it'll be so mediocre.
I'll
And you
just, you know
guys,
what? I'll cut you 60 or 70 clips from this recording and you can just put it up. How about that? We'll collaborate.
listen, please, I would like them to be more mediocre. Okay, thanks.
Hey, thanks. You know, I tried. I tried making your real career real from you, but it's really exciting. I'm so glad that you're doing this, and
Thank you.
this
Oh,
was
follow me
really
on
fun.
all social media. That's what I meant. ADDYMITZY. Instagram is the only one I'm active on.
Lovely. I'll make sure that link is in the description. And Aditi, thanks. It's been really fun chatting with you today, and thanks for taking the time. And you know, we should catch up more and hopefully get on stage soon and do a show together.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Sandeep. Have a fab evening.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, please do check out the other episodes on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And I would much appreciate it if you could like the video, share it with people who you think might enjoy it, and of course, do subscribe to the channel because it will help me and the podcast grow and reach more people just like you. So thanks again. Appreciate it.